It's good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Yeah, I haven't seen you since the summer when you did the what was the actual name of it?
I believe it was the oh my gosh, mind blank, sorry.
Oh yeah.
It was the dinner with Steph and Trey
Yep.
and Scott.
Yes.
And I can't remember what the name was.
Oh yeah, but that's fine. We're in COVID years right now. That might as well have been two
Isn't that
lifetimes ago.
awful?
No,
it was just having a trio dinner on the farm.
Oh, yeah.
The trio
Okay.
dinner. So now that I think about it, a little bit harder. But yeah, the trio dinner with Scott, Steph, and Trey was amazing.
Yeah.
They did a great job, and
Yeah.
we had really great response off of that one. So all the dinners that we had after that were highly attended, which was great.
That's super good to hear. I mean, I noticed that you had done more dinners, and I assumed that it was just because that one had been so successful. I mean, I was there. I got to taste everything, and it was good for the show too. I mean, honestly, because I ended up having Scott on later, and I've alluded to that episode and the interview with you and some of the talks with Trey multiple times. It's been super great. First of all, welcome to Minnesota Well Done. I'm Christos. This is Carla Mertz of Iron Shoe Farms. And the homestead of Princeton, is that a separate? I noticed there was like some kind of Facebook group or page. Can you explain to me that a little bit? It's like a nonprofit that you've started, right?
Yeah, so we're working on the farmstead at Diamond Leaf Farm. And that's going to be an agriculture educational center, both for the farmer rancher as well as the consumer and education.
Wow.
So right now we're in the very beginning stages of raising funding for the property, essentially. So we have a pretty large goal to attain, but I think it's doable. I think more and more people are saying how they want to learn about agriculture, everything from the ground up. Starting from the soil and what that means. And yeah, big whoop whoop. So really showcasing what that means in buying a farm and starting from scratch.
Yeah.
And what we really need to do to treat the soil and bring it back to its glory day. The property we're looking at was a staple in the community, and we would hate for it to be torn down. So we actually were brought in through the city of Princeton, and there's a couple other people that were interested in us taking over that property, but we can't do it without the community help.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
But it's going to be everything from learning how to have food and what that means. So gardens will be on the property. There will be plenty of opportunity to learn from local chefs and how they make the food that they're preparing, and even going in and learning how to preserve and can and ferment, and having other farmers come in and do education and seminars. And then there will be a bed and breakfast on the property. We will be able to have events there. So it'll be this huge compilation of many different entities all wrapped into one.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds fantastic. It sounds like everything that I would want in an experience, really.
Yeah.
It seems very parallel to what I'm trying to do with the show is, educate people on, like, for instance, one of the big things that I wanted to talk to you today about is for everybody watching this show is how to get them connected with what you're doing, right? Because there's all these people that I think have, especially after COVID, but even before, we're starting to get galvanized into this farm to table, soil to plate kind of mentality, but they had no idea where to start. Mm-hmm. And, that where you start is getting educated, right? And that's kind of, I look at it as my, kind of my mission right now, but it seems that you're doing it. And at the same time, you're providing, you're not just providing the education, but you're providing the products that you're educating people about, which I think is phenomenally cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm excited to have you back on the show because what you have going on, what you had going on in the summer, I thought was a really cool way to kind of get people excited about what you're doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're not just farming, right? Like, I remember when I was a kid, I looked at a farm as like this, I don't know, like it was just hard work, and it had no like meaning in my life,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then as I grew up, it's like I kind of realized like most of the food I'm eating are from these corporations and stuff like that. And then when I went to your farm, it wasn't maybe the first experience that I've had like that, but it was the first experience I've had like that in a very long time, where I was getting to see kind of the food be grown in front of me and then cooked in front of me, and then I was eating it. And it's definitely paradigm shifting, you know what I mean?
Right.
Definitely paradigm shifting.
Yeah, it's been, this year's been really one to kind of put it in the forefront and express to the consumer, we're a diversified farm, right? So we're not just doing one thing. And we raise hogs, and we raise beef cattle, and we're doing chickens, and we have egg layers, and then we have microgreens and edible flowers. And people are like, wow, isn't that a lot to take on? It is, but we're a diversified farm for a reason. And it's ecology. So it all works together. You just have to learn how to get it to work together. And there's, we do herbal flowers. The herbal teas are coming down the pipeline. We have, parsley and oregano, and then we grow marigolds. And to be able to incorporate those into tea, that's why we do that.
Yeah.
There's purposes behind it, and it makes me feel better, and then I can pass that on to the consumer.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, well, I get this from whoever, where, whatever tea, well, this is local. It's from my garden.
Right.
We've gone through the process. We're able to sell it. We work with the state. We have cottage food licensure. We have different licenses that allow us to do this. And that's an educational point too. And not everybody knows that you have to also do that in order to farm in Minnesota. So it's pretty amazing, all the things that come out of it. It's pretty cool.
So I'm at the end of the episode, I'm going to put all of your, I'm going to, kind of combine all of your information, but just, for sake of conversation, how can people get to you, right? Because you have all these products, and it's grown, by you, and you have beef, and you have pork, and I don't know if you're still, years ahead on pork. You have chicken, you have eggs, you have vegetables, you have all kinds of stuff, and even stuff that you don't grow on your farm. People that grow things on their farms, just like in your county and near you can get all of that. How can people kind of tune into that and compile that information?
So we use our Facebook page like our advertising, right?
Mm-hmm.
So our Facebook page always has specials that we have going on. We showcase recipes on there. So that's a really good starting point. But our website, it's ironshoefarm.com, and then there's /the-pantry. So it's the pantry. And it'll say right on the website, you can shop now, and you just click on that, and they'll bring you right to the store. We have our store open every Saturday from 9 to noon, and it's open. Like, people can come and they can shop. With COVID, we have some COVID measures that we allow only 2 people at a time in the store, and that's just to keep it safe and do social distancing when we're there.
Yeah.
But people can pre-order, they can pick up. We also do delivery to the Twin City metro area. So that's another option too, where they can order by a certain time and then pick up. But
wow, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Is there something going on?
I think that's my phone.
Oh yeah, no
I'm
worries.
Sorry.
No worries. It's not. This isn't.
I'm like, it's buzzing.
Yeah, no. This isn't Ellen. Yeah, I mean, we're gonna be fine. No, I think it's cool that people can go and shop, and I think it's important that you're, taking those COVID measures. Everybody's trying to do their best to kind of work around this. I mean, just really momentous time. But okay, so I will put the I'll put the link to the Facebook page. I'll put the link to your website, and then people can, then people don't really have. I don't like to call it an excuse, right? I don't think that people are actively like trying to avoid this kind of stuff, but then people really have access to you,
They do.
and that's something that I think is very, very important. It's like when we talk about like the reason for Michelin stars in certain cities and stuff, it's because of the infrastructure, right? Like, so you can have all those products and you can have talented chefs, but if you don't have the dots connected, then it's all pretty useless.
Right.
So I want to talk a little bit about what you were talking about with the connectedness in diversity, right? Because it's something that, well, it's one of the main things that pushed me to go back to school, was to kind of learn about how these ecological factors can be used in the agricultural systems that we're already using, right? So like one that sticks out is Dan Barber talks about having chickens go through and kind of eat maggots that would eventually become flies and then could cause some kind of disease or pain for the cow. Can we talk a little bit about techniques that you do that work on your farm?
Sure. Yeah, we kind of have every animal species is intermingled somehow.
Yeah.
And next year we're actually looking at kind of changing things up a little bit. So we've been on our farm for 7 years. The first 3 years, our chickens were free ranging all over. They had free access just because we weren't an event location at the time. And it was really great because they kept the bug population down, and they helped with, just really keeping the grass fertilized. And we kind of noticed that things were really coming to life that way. And then we'd see them roaming out by where the cattle were and picking up some of the grain and going through, the piles of manure. And we're like, what in the world? So we just kind of would watch and kind of observe at that point, and learning from the U of M extension that there's reasons why they do that. They know where the good stuff is, what they really need in their diet. And once we became an event location, I had to start hunkering those animals into a smaller footprint. Just because when we have people over, we don't want them stepping in chicken manure while they're walking across the lawn. But we have the area, with the chickens, and they're on pine shavings and in their coop. And then when we're cleaning the coop out, all of that goes out onto the pastures, and then it fertilizes the pasture. So we're doing a 2-step thing there. So we're not having to use chemicals or anything bad for the soil. So whatever you put in is what you're going to get out. So that's a natural way of fertilizing our pastures. The second part of that is looking at how our hogs are out on pasture. Even though they're in smaller confinement paddocks, we are looking at doing what's called a wagon wheel design. And that would be where there's a central hub, essentially, and then the hogs are out on pasture, and they have about 6 to 10 paddocks that they get to go through. So they're in each one for about 4 to 6 week period, and then we're replanting seed. But then what we're going to do is have our poultry go in after each movement of the hogs, and then the chickens will go in through, and then they'll help with the environment of the soil as well. They'll amend it. They'll pick through whatever's out there that's tasty to them.
Yeah.
And then they'll just kind of keep that movement going. So we're, again, doing a 2-step where we're repairing that soil, and then the new seed is going to come in after the chickens go through, and then we'll kind of cycle the hogs through again. So we learned that through just a Facebook page of pasturing hogs. And there's a gentleman down in the southern portion of the states that's doing that. And we're like, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I think we should do that.
Yeah.
And so it's just a way to we don't have a huge space for them. So for us to kind of have a condensed version of that is going to help our farm just stay healthy.
Yeah. Because it prevents, things like overgrazing and trampling and killing the topsoil.
Yep.
And it gives time for, the microbiology of the soil to recover, and then for grasses to grow again, and then eventually, but at the same time, you don't want these grasses to overgrow.
Right.
So actually having the hogs going out onto pasture is good for the land to a certain degree. Am I right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's awesome. Do you do that with your cows as well?
We do, not as much as we should be.
Yeah.
They actually have been kind of up in the forefront. We're trying to reestablish some of the pastures that we have up front. And we have a small herd right now. So we only have 8 head of cattle, and they're getting enough nutrition out of the 7 acres. You want about 1 acre per cow. So they're really getting what they need out of that pasture, and we're able to move them from one pasture to the next every 4 to 6 weeks. So again, you're getting that rest period where the grasses grow up, and then you're putting them out there before everything goes to seed. We actually, for our farm, we had to get approval from the Army Corps of Engineers to build a road that goes from our front 2 pastures out to the back pasture.
Really?
So we have wetlands there. So we had to work with the NRCS office and get approvals from them on what to do and what we can put in there and just be kosher to that wetland area. So we're not putting anything bad in there.
Well, it's good to hear that they are upholding things like that, just simply because if it obviously you were able to work around it, and they were able to make it work, and at the same time you have this kind of, I'm sure there's native species in there, and there's all kinds of like what do they call it, buffer environments for for pollution and all that kind of stuff. So that's cool that they were both able to work with you, and still we got to do it this way.
Yeah, they were really great about saying, well, yeah, you can use these pine shavings because it's still natural, it's not going to contaminate. And we talked about putting fiber mats down, and they're like, well, you can do that, but then you're changing your infrastructure. And so they gave a really good dynamic of what we can and cannot do in that space to get them to the back 40 acres. So we will be doing that in the spring, which will be awesome. We've been waiting for 5 years to do that.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
a lot of work.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
We have a.
So
I
have
think
you
it's
been waiting for
200
approval,
feet.
or have you been building it for 5 years?
Just building it.
Yeah,
It's,
I see.
It's just been a process because we want to put the right materials in there, and the swamp freezes and then it gets wet some years, and some years we can't get in there because it's too wet. But it's just being patient. And I think now that our herd is growing, like we doubled our herd this year. We went from 3 to 6 and 2 steers. And so next year we'll have 3 more babies. And it just keeps growing, which is great, which is what you want. But at the same token, now we'll be able to utilize all those pastures. And so over the 7 years, we've been preparing for that. We put above ground summertime water lines out there, so we have automatic watering happening, and we knew that was going to be a benefit down the road, and it's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
So
it sounds great.
Yeah.
So let's get started talking about production of meat, right? And what you have available, and some of the issues that have been going on with that, especially since COVID, and then we'll take a quick break. Okay? So you want to just give me a load on everything that you have available in terms of meat, because I know we talked a little bit about pigs, but I'm not really sure. It was a while ago.
Yeah. So we raise Mangalitsa red wattle hogs, and they are known as the red velvet of the pork industry. We'll just call it that coined term. The meat is beautiful red, and it has a high fat content because of the Mangalitsa. And Mangalitsa have about a 7-inch thick back fat layer on them. So when you're looking at the lard content, it's great for rendered lard, cured lards, which they do frequently in Hungary,
Yeah.
where they're from. And we love the breed itself. They're amazing animals, and we have found that now we've been gaining some momentum with people coming out at the dinner series and having it, so we are actually sold through our stock for through January.
Okay.
But we will be farrowing, I would say about 45 to 50 hogs next year, and those aren't dedicated yet. So those will be for the following year, for 2022. And our availability as far as having butcher dates, we'll have dates set up May, June, and July.
And so do you sell them in like quarters, or like I've been to places or more people that where they're like, you can buy it in a half, you can buy it, you can buy the front end, you can buy the back end. But I've also seen people who do the smaller cuts, and usually that's more money. But what do you have available in terms of the cuts?
We tend to do by the half for the whole.
Okay.
It's just out of simplicity, and then we know that the animal is dedicated.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
And then our consumer actually goes and we do a deposit. So they put a deposit onto the animal, knowing that it's dedicated to them, because we have a wait list, essentially. That's how we've always done things. Especially with bulk ordering. And then we do keep some back for our retail cuts that we sell off the farm. So, we have 2 that will just have your standard pork chops, ham steaks, ground pork, that sort of thing. Right now we're sold out of those cuts, but hope to have more in stock in January.
January, yeah. That's not far away.
It's really not.
No, it's not far away.
6 months ago, though, it seemed like an eternity.
Yeah.
So that's the pork situation. And that seems to just kind of keep growing every year.
Yeah.
With the popularity of the breed itself. There's more and more people in Minnesota that are raising Mangalitsas in general. So if we don't have something, we can always put people in contact with someone who does.
Okay.
That's the beauty of it. So, and then as far as beef, we actually have 2 beef going in December, and I've got 1 1/4 that are not accounted for. And we're just going to probably have those done in retail cuts if they're not sold within the next couple weeks. They go in on the 17th. And then we have a boatload of chicken that's been processed from this year. So we have that in off-site freezer storage. So we do wholes and parted out fryer chickens. And then we also have the feet and the hearts and the gizzard liver. We keep everything. So
That's awesome.
we do bone broth packs, and those have sold out, which with COVID and flu season, they tend to.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And it's just really great to have your own bone broth anyway. I think it's good for the system. So
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot more than you can do than just bone broth, right? This
Yes.
Coming from a chef, right? Like last Thanksgiving, I wanted to switch things up, right? Not this, just the one that just happened, but the year prior, we did half chickens, right? And I did a nice sear on the half chicken, and then I took all of the bones, because I just broke up whole chickens, and then I made a stock, then I made a demi, then I made like this beautiful soft velvety gravy out of the demi. And it's like, that's also something that you can do with all those organs. There's organ meat pies you can do.
Yeah.
These are really essential things in just from my view from it. So I'm going to ask you one quick question. We got like 3 minutes.
Okay.
Do you send things to a butcher then, or is that on the consumer side? Is that up to them, or how does that transfer work? I'm just curious.
We've done things a little differently this year, not by choice. It's just been how the lay of the land is right now. We do have a majority of our chickens processed at an off-site location, so that's a USDA inspected processing facility up at Lake Haven Meats, which is in just north of Hinckley. And so it's a 3-hour to 4-hour commitment for us to drive up and drive back, and then you have to do it twice because you're dropping off and then picking up.
Yeah.
So our birds are generally processed there, but we did at the end of the season elect to have a mobile butcher come and butcher right on the farm. And because we are direct to consumer, we can still sell those birds, but it has to be off on the farm. So if we choose to sell those birds, the consumer has to come and pick them up from us.
Okay.
And USDA helps us get into restaurants, grocery stores, co-ops, things of that nature. So we just decided, well, we're going to give this a shot because we know that there's a lack of processing right now anyway. And if it's something that can make our life a little bit easier and do it that way, we will. And I wanted the education behind it too. So we actually had a group, Greg actually came out. He's with Clean Chickens, and so he has a mobile trailer that he brings and sets everything up, and they do it right there. And it was interesting because then I don't want to get too graphic, but he gave us the innards and the heads and the feathers, and we actually composted those for our garden for next year. So
that'd be great.
The feather mill, and then we added ash, and then we're just going to till it right into where the garden is going to go. And that's, again, bringing everything full circle. And then our hogs, we have 6 of them that are going to be butchered on the farm, slaughtered, and then brought to the butcher shop in Hinckley, and that's the first time we're doing that. It's actually more humane to do the process right there on the farm, but there's some stipulations we have to follow too with the county that we live in. So we can't do the cutting of the meat and that there, but we can have the butcher come and do the kill step and then bring them to the facility where he's at to do the cutting. Otherwise, we work with another butcher, Grand Champion Meats in Foley, and they do everything there as well, and we can have inspection. So we can kind of do a couple different things, but right now it was based on when I can get in and how many hogs I can get in.
Yeah.
And then that's it. So
I love it.
Yeah.
Let's take a quick break, and then we'll get right back to it.
Sounds good.
If it's something that you want to separate.
Because I want to give her equal ownership on that.
Yeah.
Since a lot of it is her project, we've just been brought in as a test marketer, if you will. And to be able to then, we'll be able to distribute the product in a dry state as a feed source. So it's all bagged and ready to go, and the farmer can pick it up from us.
That's very cool.
So, yeah.
That's very cool.
Crazy. But it's cool that it's like, it's 100% upcycled food.
Yeah.
And that's amazingly cool.
Yeah.
And sustainable, and I don't know, I'm excited about it. So I can't talk too much about it yet.
Okay. All right. So that will be a tease for everybody at home to keep watching the show. You have big things coming. And that's definitely something that this show has just kind of forced me into, right? Like, I've always been knowledgeable of these kind of things, but the upcycling is just like the actual things that people out there are doing. Like I said, I just put out the episode with R&R Cultivation and what they're doing, and it's all, one input is leading into another input, which feeds the soil and is fertilizer for these people, and then it's just very, very cool, and I'm glad to know that you're doing something similar. So I want to talk. I want to get a little bit more back onto the soil, because we haven't talked about soil in a while. And when I was out on the farm, we were kind of like, bing, bing, bing. We were all over the place, and so I'm in cahoots. I'm talking to a soil scientist, right? His name is Lance Klessinger, and I'm hoping to have him on the show soon. But he worked with the guy who wrote Dirt to Soil, and this is what I'm really interested in, passionate about, because there's some kind of magic to it, right? Like you can't really see what's going on, but there's a very clear difference between unhealthy soil and healthy soil. Mm-hmm. And when I got to talk to you just kind of right when we first met, it seemed like you had kind of gone through a similar like reveal, right? Like you've been obviously you've been living the life, but you've been learning about the health of the soil. And can you, like, for everybody watching, I just want to give them like a crash course. Let's go.
Crash course. Well, I'm not that like the know-it-all in soil. Mm-hmm. I've just been educated by some pretty amazing people who are. So Doug Voss with the Sustainable Farming Association came out because I said, I don't know what to do. I have this beautiful property and we can't get grass to grow here. Like it's failing. Yeah. And I don't know why. And it's because I'm not educated in the soil sciences, and there's so much to know. We live in sandy loam. So for us, it's potato country up there. I just found out 2 weeks ago Princeton was known as the potato capital of the world. I had no idea. It wasn't Idaho. It was Princeton, Minnesota.
Oh wow, I didn't know that either. And pretty interesting. So to know that, we've got these awesome root vegetables that can grow, but our grasses aren't growing how they need to, really was a testament to saying we need to really repair this. And we get quack grass, we get all kinds of other things, and those are popping up because the soil isn't healthy. So we have alyssum coming up, and it's highly toxic to horses, and didn't know that. Yeah, I didn't know that either.
Just to find out, hey, we've got to pull some of that, back and really repair things. So we had dug out, and he said, start checkerboarding your bales on the property when you're putting them out in the wintertime. You don't have to put them up on a feeder, just put them right on the ground, and you'll start seeing a difference. And it may not be this year, but it may be the following year. So of course this year we were able to see where we put those bales strategically, and then all of a sudden the grass was greener. Like it was richer, greener. We put manure out prior to the season, so we knew that there was fertilizer there. And then we had the NRCS come out and plant the warm season grasses that were not doing well at all. They were very patchy, and warm season grasses take about 7 years to really come to fruition. They just weren't. For one, we found out we were lacking, we needed lime really bad. Our pH was awful. I found that out through the U of M, so they helped us with our soil testing. And Doug was like, I think you need to have the NRCS come out, and then we'll plant peas and radish and a couple other varieties. And so we had about 6 different varieties growing in that pasture, and it did really well until the heat came. And then everything just kind of fizzled out. And so we're learning that we're going to have to put far more effort into what we're already doing.
Yeah.
So it's something that I kind of look back. It was probably the first thing we should probably have done when we moved in, was really pay attention to the soil first, rather than just putting animals out there.
Yeah.
And so everyone who comes to me and says, well, what's your number one thing you would recommend me doing when I'm starting a farm? You start with the soil.
Yeah.
It's just the number one right now.
Yeah.
And I think with regenerative agriculture and seeing how things are really coming to fruition with that, like you see these shows like The Biggest Little Farm and Kiss the Ground and all of these wonderful shows that are coming out and documentaries, and it's attesting to regenerative agriculture and starting at that point. Like what can we put into the ground that's going to be healthy and have longevity to it, instead of tilling. You want no-till.
Yeah.
And so that's been highly educational.
Mother, no-till.
No-till.
No, I love my
Even though
mom.
I till my own garden, but
But also also it's like you have to use all of these things in tandem. You can't just pick one and run with it like it is a panacea, right? There is no panacea, but these are the combination of getting native grasses in, of getting nitrogen fixing plants to refix nitrogen into the soil so that your grasses can grow when you do plant them. Not tilling the soil so that the mycelium in the topsoil doesn't die, and then you're able to transfer the nitrogen from these roots to these roots. It's like tilling kills all that. I was talking with my father the other day, and I was like, well, actually, no, I've had this conversation with him a couple times because people have wanted to know why I'm going to school for the things that I did. And I think I wasn't kiss the ground, but maybe it was dirt to soil, or maybe it was just dirt. I've read so many books. The soil, dirt, kiss the ground, plate, soil, dirt. But anyways, I was having a conversation with my dad, and he's kind of a history buff, and I'm like, it's like this is a huge reason why civilizations throughout history have fallen, is because they've tilled and tilled and tilled and tilled, and then you have desert. It's crazy. So it's good to hear that. It's good to have that kind of reassured by you, and it's interesting to hear the problems that you're having with it, right? Because I think that's with cooking, for one, there's never a panacea, and there's always something that can go wrong. But the flip side of that is there's always something to do in response to that going wrong, and you can always fix it. You can always make it better. I mean, there's obviously, if you have sometimes you have to start over, right? But
you can't scrape it off.
Yeah. I mean, if I leave a pie in the oven for 32 hours, maybe we might have to restart on the pie. But the point is that there's many different options to go with, and it's a fluid process. And I that's one thing that I really want to get across with both with farming, with cooking, with food, and with soil, with tending to the soil. So I think that it's cool. And I think you gave me Voss's information, and I haven't gotten a hold of him, but I'll do that, and I'll have him on the show just to talk a little bit more in depth about the soil, because it's an interesting thing when Michael Pollan talks about it's not about what your food, or it's about what you eat, but it's also about what your food eats, right? And then what your food's food eats, right? Which eventually gets down to the soil, and you've seen differences, right? I mean, it's not just in the brightness of the grass, but in the quality of life in the cows and the pigs and the chickens, etc. Right?
Yes.
Am I off?
Yes.
Okay.
No, you're not off.
Yeah.
You're right on.
Yeah.
So it's been a learning curve. Like I said, I don't know everything when it comes to that. So that's why we reached out both to the U of M and to Doug and Kent Solberg. I mean, it's just, they were the people that everyone else was referring us to go see. So without that, little bit of help, could we be doing better? Absolutely. Yeah. But there's like only so much that you can do when you're on a farm budget, right? So if I had all the money in the world to be able to put into all of that, then yes, of course we would, everything would be perfect and lush, but we have some challenges too that we face, and we know that's on our top priority actually next year. So COVID's kind of put a little bit of a challenge in front of us. So it's almost like we're starting over in some ways, right? So next year is going to be great for that.
Yeah, let's talk about some of the challenges that you've been faced with because of COVID, because your life has changed incredibly in the last year, hasn't it? Yeah. Not just a business, but your life in general. Just, I mean, before you said you were mostly selling to restaurants, and obviously with the first shutdown that changed quite drastically, and now with the second shutdown, it's like you've made all these changes and you've adapted in these certain ways. Now there's a second shutdown. It's winter. Let's just talk about like the fluidity of the business that you've created, because it's more than just a farm, right? It's
Yeah.
this whole network that
Yeah.
you seem to create.
We, 3 years ago, we started selling to restaurants. We've always been direct to consumer. But the restaurant business just kept building, and it was because of microgreens. Everything else kind of seemed to fall in after that. It was the what else do you have? And mentality of selling and relationship building. So we got up to 45 restaurants pre-COVID, and we were very comfortable. We were pumping out 200 trays of microgreens a week, and business was really good. And we were steady. We were rocking and growing by like 500% every year the last 3 years, which is huge.
Yeah.
The 3 years ago we only had 2 hogs. And so now, to say we're doing between 30 and 50 is huge growth.
Yeah.
And it's with the first shutdown, we lost 90% of our business. We kept our direct to consumer, but the restaurant business just went away.
Yeah.
And during the Dinner on the Farm series, that May to September, we had 2 restaurants that were buying from us, and the rest was direct to consumer. And then now with this second round, we don't have any restaurants that we're selling to, and we're 100% direct to consumer. So it's really shifted quite a bit, and we don't know if we'll ever get that back. Like, it's just that whole unknown right now. And I've had many discussions with many of my chef friends. I'm like, what's next? And so even with the takeout, it's trying to encourage the consumer of what are microgreens for, how do I use them? And it's far more than just a garnish. And so now there's the educational sector that we really have to work on with a product that we're selling even more than before, because the consumer doesn't really know what they are.
Yeah.
Small edible plant, 4 to 40 times more nutritional value than the full-grown vegetable. Who wouldn't want to eat that?
Yeah.
So just showcasing the how and the why part of it. So we're going to be working on that in the next couple of weeks, hard and heavy. So we just we took a step back this year, really evaluated what we were doing on the farm and what brought both personal happiness and our consumers' happiness. So what are we growing on the farm that people are wanting or liking, or whatever that is, and kind of scaling back. Like, we were supposed to have 150 hogs this year, and we cut back to only 30. And we're okay with that.
Yeah.
Like, it's been actually a breath of fresh air to just kind of slow down a little bit.
Yeah.
And to know that we're going to do about the same amount of numbers next year, I'm okay with that. Because it's, like I said, it's like we're in our 7th year, but we're starting over almost.
Yeah.
So to kind of have that little bit of a side-by-side shift, I don't know what you would call that, but it's just to stay level.
Yeah.
I feel okay with that. We have a greenhouse we're putting up next year, so that's going to be something new for us.
That's so cool.
Yeah, super cool. So we're moving our tomatoes into that, because we actually did pretty well with the couple of restaurants that were just buying that product alone. And they bought from us all season. So to know that we had that dedicated felt good. Like, I didn't have to go to 50 other places to say I've got hundreds of pounds of tomatoes. It was more of them saying, hey, do you know of someone else that might have something available? And so this year's just been building relationships with other farmers and other producers, and to be able to connect people with product that we have here. That's been, I think, like a high number 1 on my list of what we've been doing this year, was shifting and advocating really strongly for just local food.
Yeah.
And that part's been rewarding enough for me. It's been pretty neat to say, oh, hey, do you know someone who has, goat soap? Well, yeah, she's like right at the farmer's market in town, so go see Karen, and Who else do you know that has shishito peppers? There's someone at the farmer's market. I'll get you in touch with them. So, or our rolled oats come from Moorhead, Minnesota, from Doubting Thomas Farms. You can either buy from us or you can go direct. Like, it's okay to do that.
Yeah.
And we're just here as a source to be able to get it to central Minnesota.
Yeah.
But yeah, who would have known that we could get grits locally, or I don't know, some of the coolest stuff that I've seen come down the pipeline. Local spices, local tea. That's been awesome.
That's all really super cool, especially to me, because like I think it's maybe just the chef and me, but I think that having a food culture is it's very important for a community, right? Mm-hmm. And in many places in America, I'd say in most places in America, that food culture has been kind of globalized. Mm-hmm. And I'm not against globalization by any means. I'm not trying to have a political sense, or a political stance on anything. But when it comes to food, that globalization falls apart, right? Mm-hmm. I had a conversation with Jack Riebel at the beginning of the show where he talks about how do we scale up, and it's like, well, just don't, right? Mm-hmm. Network, we have everything that we need right here. I love especially that you're talking about getting this education going, and we're talking about the infrastructure, we're talking about the networking, because it all goes into a food culture, mm-hmm. right? We can grow all these things. Mm-hmm. We have all these things that, some are native to Minnesota, some aren't native to Minnesota, but it's like the culture and the history of the people that have come over have kind of transformed a specific culture. Mm-hmm. It's a specific culture of food. Mm-hmm. Now let's just put it into action, and that's definitely what you're doing. The education piece, I think, is, it's just absolutely necessary. Can we talk about when are you planning on opening this again?
We hope next year. So yeah. It all just depends on the project funding that we can get. So we'll be uploading the GoFundMe this weekend. We actually have a donation link right now. It goes to the Iron Shoe Farm page to do donations through that site for now until we get our site live. But we have $400,000 to raise for land acquisition. That's the first step. So we would like to do that as soon as possible, but our goal is to have, possession of that by May, and it's perfect timing because that's when farming season starts. So, and then with that, we have kind of a whole lineup of different educators that are able to come out and start doing seminars, whether it's on Zoom, depending on where we're at with COVID, to have that curriculum live or on Zoom, or, to be able to do videos and educational pieces, and it'll be great.
Yeah. It sounds great.
Yeah.
Wow, let's take another quick break, and then I want to get to what you have on the shelf.
Okay.
All right.
Sounds good.
What's on the shelf, man? What's on the shelf, man? Okay, let's talk about your shelf.
Shelf?
Yeah, so what do you got going on there? Let's just start picking stuff off and explaining it to the people at home.
Yeah, so I brought with quite a few products that we have at the pantry store. So we started working with Rob at Folly Coffee. Yeah. I brought with my personal favorite, so it's got the little star with it on my book. But it's truly my favorite coffee. I can't express it enough, and because of that, I think we've already sold through the first case, which and I know it doesn't seem like a lot, but in 2 weeks, I think that's pretty good.
Yeah.
So that's his SOB Espresso. I just like the name of it anyway.
Yeah.
But and then we work with Kathy's Bakery. She is also featured at Kowalski's, but it's a super great shortbread cookie mix, which there's oatmeal and then the plain, and then we partnered that with hot cocoa, which is made in Duluth, Minnesota. From Mike and Jen's. It's hands down the best cocoa in the state of Minnesota.
I love it.
And it's non-chemical, so everything in it is natural, which is really great. We also have, kind of tucked back behind here, is 14 Spice, and that's with Mike German
Yeah, Mike
out of St.
German,
Paul.
what up? Friend of the
So
show.
he actually just came out with a new Cajun spice too. That was just released. So part of Cyber Monday today, we had that as a special. If you ordered from us, you got that included with your order.
Very cool.
And then we have right behind me is our breakfast kit that we're doing for the holidays. So you get a local honey from Princeton, Minnesota, from Silver Creek Farm, Sunrise Flour Mill pancake mix, and then rolled oats from Doubting Thomas Farm, and pure maple sugar from Woodland Farm in Minnesota. And then I have some pretty cool books behind me.
Yeah.
So I have tons of resources, and one I didn't bring with me is actually like a 5-inch thick binder from the U of M, and that was a Living on the Land series that both my husband and I attended, and that was the very first farm seminar we ever went to. And it was the first book that I ever had my hands on with information, and it literally walked us through step by step of what we wanted our farm to look like, and how we would work with the consumer, developing our business name and how to get started, and all of these amazing things that we're doing now. And true test to that, Rod Greeter with the U of M actually brought me in to speak to his new class this year. So that was pretty awesome.
When things go full circle like that, you gotta just smile.
It was cool to be a mentor and have people ask questions to me, which I was asking those questions 7 years ago when we started. And so that part just, it puts a huge smile on my face, because I remember being where those students were when we first started, and like, I don't know what I'm doing or how I'm going to start this. And so to have Rod and Wayne and all of those guys reaching out to me now is pretty neat.
Yeah, that's super neat.
And then I have a pretty special, we have a history book that features my family. My great aunt Lucy was a avid writer.
Why don't you grab it?
And so I got this from my aunt when I visited her.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's just family history.
I love
and
it.
Here's my special Aunt Lucy on the front cover.
Oh, yeah.
So she was actually an avid writer in Belfouche, South Dakota, and lived through the whole pioneering days. And so kind of like learning about Laura Ingalls Wilder, and that was just my childhood, right? So 1980s kid learning about pioneer days, and it was just something that stuck with me. And I'm a great-granddaughter of a rancher, and to me it was just fitting to, it's just really cool to know that she wrote in the local paper, and she lived to be 92 and lived a long, healthy life. And to know that she was part of the first posse was really cool too. So lots of cool family history to me, and that's important. And we learned then, passed down through my grandma, that whatever you took from the land, you just put back.
Yeah.
And whether it's animals or vegetation or whatnot.
Yeah. Well, and you're continuing that today. That's the cool part, is like, it is history, but you're like, you're making it the present. And that's very, very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I went to a seminar with Brian DeVore. He wrote a book called Wildly Successful Farming. And it talks about sustainability and living with the land. And so to me, it kind of speaks in what we're doing with upcycling spent grain and distiller's grain, which is that new project with Sue Marshall with Net Zero. And then being able to know that we're keeping that out of the landfill. It's pretty impressive to know that feed source, we're gaining, 20% protein for our animals sometimes with that food program. And then Curtis Stone, I've followed his YouTube
Will you grab
channel.
that one? I don't know if everybody can see that one.
This one, it's called The Urban Farmer, Growing Food for Profit and Lease on Borrowed Land. And so this book is one that I kind of took to heart, because he talks about microgreens a lot and how to market them, bring them to market. He actually went around and rented little plots of land from people to get started in an urban setting. And to me, that was pretty iconic. He's changed a lot in the last year because COVID has affected his business as well, and he's gone to a larger farm. So it's changed dynamics. But this book goes through all the things that I think farmers could use for a resource for marketing their product. So how to sell, how to go to chefs, how to reach out, how to network, working with other farmers even. And this isn't a I'm better than you farmer thing. It's more of a cooperative farming. How can we work on this together? And he goes through even like how to set your pricing and how
Very cool.
what my profit margin is going to be. And just there's great pictures in here.
Yeah.
So to be able to say like this is what I want my greenhouse to look like, and then my husband's like, oh my gosh, really? And then this book I actually got when we first started, and it's more for kind of the at-home homesteader. So this is a really great book if what can I do from a quarter of an acre. So on the back, it's like
a quarter of an acre?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can get 1,400 eggs in a year, 50 pounds of wheat, 60 pounds of fruit, 2,000 pounds of vegetables, 280 pounds of pork. So you can raise one hog, right? And then nuts. So there's all kinds of, canning and herbal teas. So it's more for the backyard homesteader. Mm-hmm. Someone who wants to have that small garden and they want to preserve and can and ferment. And it's just a great resource there. And they have garden plot ideas in here. So that to me is like, I feel like my garden stinks every year. But it's a work in progress.
Yeah, it's a work in progress for me too. I mean, it's, we've talked about a little bit like how you just kind of have to let things like if you're gonna not do till and you're gonna fertilize in a certain way, you have to stick to that for a couple years, and then it'll start to show. Yes. It's hard being patient in that way.
It is, and it's hard to be consistent.
Yeah.
It's hard to figure out what's going to grow best in that garden too, because I've tried even doing the same thing 3 years in a row because I'm like, oh, maybe this is going to be the year. No.
Yeah.
All I know is that don't put your microgreen base with your coco coir and that in your compost when you're growing cilantro, because then it bolts everywhere, right? And then Stories Guide. These are like all over, and they have different versions, whether it's cattle or sheep or pigs. And so this one is on raising pigs. And it literally goes through animal care, what to do when you might have an ailment, supplements. So these are really great for people who haven't ever raised livestock, and it's kind of like a Bible. Breed by breed Bible. And for me, we learned a lot. I personally learned a lot from this because like I said, I started raising hogs 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's not just sticking them in a pen and watching them grow.
Right.
It's far more than that. And giving them adequate space and shelter. This year we actually did better with our water. So we had, last year we did these stock tanks and put a metal nippler on the bottom. And then every time we went out there when the water froze, it was awful. Like we'd have to chip it out and get this big block of ice out. It was freezing. They weren't getting water. So this year we actually took one of those big IBC plastic totes. My husband cut a hole into it on the side and made a stock tank, and then we drop the heater into it in the middle and plug it in. So we've got heated water, and it's actually held up the last 2 months with all the freezing.
That's very
back
cool.
And forth, and we're like,
yes, that's very cool.
This is going to be awesome. So finding out what works for you is it's trial and error. A lot of farming, trial and error. Let's see if this works. It might not work for someone else, but it might work for us, and vice versa. But being on a pastured raised, there's a pasture grazed Facebook page, and a lot of people ask, what do you do for winter water? Well, this has worked for us, and now 3 people have tried it, and they said it works awesome.
That's very cool.
It's kind of cool to see everyone learning from each other.
Can we go on a quick riff about some of the winter, certain winter obstacles? I mean, I'm sure there's a vast amount, but can we talk about a couple? Because like whenever I get into a conversation about sustainable agriculture or eating from food that's near you, the concept, especially in Minnesota, comes up of winter. What do we do in the winter? What are we going to do in the winter? How are you going to live, without using these huge industrial processes in the winter? Can we talk about that? Like, let's just pretend I asked you that question. What do you do in the winter?
So what we do in the winter, the first year, we didn't have a spigot on the side of our house when we moved in.
Okay.
How do you get water out to your livestock? Well, we filled buckets up out of our bathtub and then filled the stock tank up outside and then brought the stock tank out.
Wow.
Yeah, it was awful.
Yeah.
But we also lived in a 1938 farmhouse, right? These are real problems that other people in rural Minnesota face.
Yeah.
And we were on 2 Sandpoint wells. One of the wells in the barn blew. It froze, so the pipes froze. That one stopped working. And so my husband, blessed, he's a plumber by trade. So he's like, okay, we'll put an outdoor spigot on. So he did that. And then we were filling up the stock tank with the tractor on the side of the house with the hose and hauling water out to the pasture.
Wow.
And I felt like the days of, granted, we weren't using oxen, but I felt like the women who would carry it out on their back. And I'm like, it's sloshing everywhere, and you have to watch for bumps, and the tractor's moving all over. And like, I have a third of the water that I started with when we were back by the house. So that was year 2. Last 2 years ago, we finally put a hydrant in. We replaced our well, so we went through water issues like crazy.
Yeah.
But we were running hoses from the house almost 300 feet out to the cattle and the hogs to fill up for winter. And then you'd have to haul the hose back and roll it up and bring it in the house so it wouldn't freeze. And then the hydrant helped last year because then it was within 10 feet of the stock tank, which was awesome.
Yeah.
It's like heavenly, right?
Yeah.
So we put electrical out there and can plug the stock tank heaters in there, and the cows are happy they have water every day. And they did anyway, but it was just, it's less, easier and easier for us. And so this year we put in another hydrant for the pigs out by the hog watering area, and now we have a little 10-foot hose that reaches the big IBC totes, and they hold about 200 gallons of water apiece.
That's
so we're out there every other day giving them water, and it's heavenly. It's nice when you have automatic watering. Not everyone has access to that, so we were in that same boat of we bring 5-gallon pails out and then fill up a small bowl for them to drink out of. Well, we're not a commercial industry, so we're raising everything out on pasture.
Yeah.
Everything stays outside all year round, but they have shelter. So our cattle have a loafing shed that they go into if the elements are bad. The hogs have these awesome porta huts that we got. They're industrial steel welded, and they're amazing. They're wonderful. So instead of having a little wood shelter that the hogs can chew and eat and knock over, and they're so destructive.
They're rambunctious little
destructive.
guys. Yeah.
They ruin everything.
Yeah.
But we love them, right? So those porta huts, anytime you can get something kind of industrial. And then we put straw down for everybody. They get fresh straw every other week. We do a deep bedding method, which is pretty natural for them out in the wild anyway. They'll dig a little bit of a hole if they need it, and then same with the cattle. They'll bed down on the hay too.
Very cool.
And chickens, we really only keep our layers and our breeding ducks during the winter. We don't do broilers in the winter because we don't have a heated building. So it just doesn't make sense. And To raise meat birds in the winter in Minnesota just doesn't work.
Yeah.
Unless you're a really large operation.
Yeah.
So
now I'm a little confused on how pasturing them in the winter even works. I mean, maybe I'm just
it wouldn't. I mean, they're so susceptible to freezing.
Yeah.
And
but I mean, with all the animals, right? So what do they do for food in the winter?
So as long as you're providing them food and
Yeah.
they're getting enough energy out of that food and their supplements, they're fine.
Yeah. Okay. So what do you supplement their food with?
So we have our cattle on grass hay blend.
Okay.
So they're getting a blend of 3 different grasses and alfalfa. And then we also are giving them spent grains. So they're getting a lot of value added supplement from that.
Yeah.
And they're also getting water retention from that because the spent grain we get is wet.
Yeah.
So
okay.
They're able to, their system breaks that down. They get all the nutrients from it right away because it's fermented feed.
That's very cool.
And then with the hogs, they get the same diet. So they are on a couple different regimens. So we give them veggies. So we get surpluses of like pumpkins and squash from other farmers. And so we give them a vegetable diet along with, they do get corn and soybeans and barley and oat. And then
just a quick question. I'm not trying to be a gotcha about it.
No.
But so where do those, you said some of the vegetables come from other farmers. Does all of that feed come from within the area as well from farmers?
Yep.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah,
That's so I mean that's a lot of sourcing. Does some of it come from your own, like, do you collect grasses or anything like that? I just don't know how any of it works, I guess.
We have a 30-acre tillable parcel.
Okay.
And so that we were doing our own hay on, but right now we rent that out to a farmer. So he puts crops in there right now. He's putting corn in, but he knows our goal in 5 years is to turn it back into hay.
Okay.
So we've been amending the soil there and fixing up, and he knows that he has 5 years of doing corn and then it goes to hay.
Yeah.
But we get the hay from 3 miles away from us. So it's still local.
Yeah.
We're still, supporting another family farm,
Yeah.
which is great. And then our feed is coming from Central Feed in Princeton. And so they are literally 3-4 miles away from us. So we know that the corn and whatever soybeans we are getting, which is high in protein, still a very valuable food source.
For sure.
And that's coming again from a local farm that's literally right down the road from us. And then, yes, the farmers that we get veggies from are within probably a 10-mile radius from us. So if they have excess produce, they just drop it off. Otherwise, again, it would just sit in the field and rot.
Yeah.
And sometimes we go pick it up from them. The spent grain we get from Lupulin in Big Lake. And we've had a relationship with Matt and Jeff for 2.5 years. And we're going to be starting to get distillers grain through Net Zero, probably starting in the next week or two. And that's another kind of a research-based project that we're going to be working on. It comes dry, but we have to wet it. So
wow.
Again, it's just we're not losing any proteins or anything by, you change it into one thing and then get it back. It's still the same. There's just no starches in it, which is really beneficial for the animal.
I bet.
So
I just think it's so great because if we're answering a question, how do you winterize, right, in Minnesota? It's there you go. There's proof. You can do it. You can winterize, and you can do it with all within what did you say, a 3-mile radius? Mm-hmm. I mean, come on, that's. So it can be done, and that's how you do it. Yeah. I love to hear it.
And we don't have heated buildings for animals. They're all outside. And as long as you give them shelter and, some straw bedding, they're fine.
Yeah.
Same with our chicken coop. It's not heated. We don't even have heat lamps down because we have a deep bedded method for them. They've got enough heat that way. And then when it's cold out, we shut the doors and they're protected.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so awesome to hear. Carla, Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
coming on the show.
My pleasure.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have to stop right now. Is there anything that you especially want to plug at the end of the show? You have so let's go over everything that you got going on right now. It's a list, but it's a freaking awesome list, right? So you have Iron Shoot Farms, right? You can go to the Facebook page, you can go to the website, and you can get broilers starting in January. You can get whole or half hogs. And then you can get what's the situation with the beef?
So beef will have retail cuts available.
Retail cuts available of beef.
Yep.
And then you have microgreens. You have eggs, both chicken and duck.
We will have duck in the spring.
In the spring. Okay. And then so that's just an overview of Iron Shoe Farms. I'm not gonna go over every damn product. Go to the freaking website. And then you have the farmstead on. I'm sorry, I forgot the name again. The farmstead on what?
Farmstead of Princeton at Diamond Leaf Farm.
Okay, and that's your education program that you're setting up, and it's going to be highly donation based. You have Scott Pompou, who's a friend of the show. He's been on a couple times, and Steph Hedrick working with you on that. Let's see, and then you have one other project you want to tease.
Yeah, we have, I just talked with Sue Marshall from Net Zero this morning, and so that is a 100% upcycled food program that she is running, and we got pulled in as a farmer connection on that project, so we're going to be working on how to essentially access that feed source and keep it in our local food system and help other farmers and get that distributed out to them. So
awesome.
Yeah. Awesome.
So yeah, all of your information is going to be available in the YouTube comments. I'm going to put it on the Instagram. I've plugged you a couple times. I'm plug you again. I have no problem doing that. I want to thank you so much for coming on, helping to educate me, helping to educate all of my viewers. It's been a wonderful time. It's always a wonderful time. You're welcome on the show whenever.
Oh, thanks. I enjoy it. It's been awesome.
Yeah. Thanks, Carla.
Yep. Thanks. Cool beans.
My heart, lovers remember my old homes are burning my memory. A shiver writes a new song. I can almost hear them singing along as I keep digging away. Her love rubbed me raw, methamphetamine, alcohol, if only left me stay. Buried in the backyard, long after gone to my childhood dark bodies. Our faces remain. Some of them were my friends. say